Let's talk about this further with the chairperson of the Cape Flats Safety Forum, Abie Isaacs, who joins me now live. Abie, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it. Do parliamentarians and the state at large know exactly what needs to be done to quell the gang violence on the Cape Flats?
Good evening to you and your viewers. I think first and foremost, as the Cape Flats Safety Forum, we've consistently been saying that there seems to be no political will in this province, particularly in the Cape Flats, in particular in the Western Cape, to deal with gun violence. I think secondly, we want to acknowledge that at least for now, that the call has now been taken to Parliament, and throughout the across political spectrums, the issue and the complaints and the outcries of the communities are now starting to go to Parliament. This takes us back just last week, where communities from Overcome needed to go and change themselves at Parliament. How far do we need to go until the President puts his pen to paper? What we've been consistently calling as the Cape Flats Safety Forum, deploy SANDF as a force multiplier to stabilize the area, whilst the other agency still goes to the drawing board and develop a plan.
This would not be the first time, if they were to heed the call and deploy the South African National Defence Force, it would not be the first time they deploy the South African National Defence Force. When the South African National Defence Force was previously deployed there, did it yield any results? Did the Cape Flats feel safer?
I think for that particular period, I think it was 2019 when SANDF was deployed, specifically to deal with gang violence. Over and above, we also need to acknowledge that SANDF was deployed when we had COVID, and the stats for COVID in terms of crime, the writing is on the wall. There were limited crime. Even for that particular period when SANDF was deployed to assist the police to stabilize the areas, crime has been, there was a decrease. I think over and above the SANDF deployment, we've also been advocating and calling there needs to be a special probe set up to deal with gun violence. A probe, like a probe that's currently running the Mandela Report Commission. There needs to be similar commission dealing with specifically gun violence, because as we know and as we came to know, that guns has become the common weapon of choice.
Let's talk about gun violence on the Cape Flats in particular. The circulation of unlicensed firearms and, of course, being used, illicit guns in particular being used by gangs, has been a source of contention in South Africa for a very long time. It's not a problem unique to the Western Cape or the Cape Flats. It's a countrywide problem. It happens if we look at political killings in KZN, for instance, if we look at taxi-related violence in Gauteng, for instance, guns seem to be quite ubiquitous there in the usage thereof. When you call for a probe into gun violence, what exactly are you calling for? A national intervention to get guns off the street, or is it to just get guns out of the hands of gangs? What does that look like?
I think first and foremost, let's look at the facts. 3 weeks ago or a month ago, firearms were intercepted from Johannesburg that were destined for the Cape Flats. And obviously we know, just last week from the reports that we got, again, firearms intercepted or recovered from police that came from KZN. And here we don't speak about your pistols, your plate toy guns. It's high caliber. So what we are saying, the probe needs to dig deeper into it. And when we say the probe, we need to begin to establish who is arming, or is there possibly a sinister force operating to destabilize the Cape Flats, in particular the Cape Town. Over and above that, we also need to acknowledge that just 2023 or 2022, the Judge Tulare, the High Court, have made a ruling that suggested that police were colluding with gangs. That report is still by the Premier of the Western Cape. And those are the things that the probe needs to look into.
So it's two things that you're calling here for. You're calling for an interim measure, which would be the deployment of the South African National Defence Force, while a more sustained solution is being looked at, such as a probe into guns, the proliferation thereof, and gun violence on the Cape Flats, to attempt to get those guns off the street, but to disrupt the supply of those guns. I'm presuming that means that it would be crime intelligence led in terms of how that would be done. What are you calling for outside of that? Because you started by problematizing the political will, or the lack thereof. How do we bring about the political will, and how do we get such a program to be enacted?
I think first and foremost, what we're saying, we acknowledge that just last year also, there was the memorandum of agreement signed between the three spheres of government. Just a couple of months before that, the one sphere were blaming the other sphere. It's their responsibility, it's a national responsibility. But since then, we've never seen the actual outcome, or there seems to be no positiveness coming from the memorandum of agreement that was signed last year. Over and above that, we need to acknowledge that the communities...
Maybe what was the underpinning of that memorandum of agreement signed between the local government, the provincial government and the national government? What was it meant to do and achieve?
And I think our view is that memorandum was to look at how collectively as the three spheres of government we look into how do we begin to resolve the issue. Yes, we also need to acknowledge that communities also have a responsibility to play, and communities are starting to come out now in the numbers with different types of actions. As I just alluded to early on, communities from Overcome chained themselves to the parliament. A week, 2 weeks ago, out in Mitchell's Plain, the clergy came together, have protest actions. So again, we need a multifaceted approach. But for now, to stabilize the area, SANDF would be the correct to assist the police to stabilize the area over and above the special probe that needs to be set up. And then we need to have a plan. The question that we are asking, somewhere or somehow, there was what we call a national anti-gang strategy. Our question is it gathering dust somewhere? Because there is a national anti-gang strategy.
Yeah, we're going to have to leave it there. Abie Isaacs, thank you thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your insights. Really do appreciate it. Abie Isaacs is the chairperson of the Cape Flats Safety Forum.